In today's session, we're going to be learning about a very relevant question which comes up about Mincha, which is we know that there is a certain time that we have to start Mincha. We can't just daven whenever we want. It has to be 6.5 halachik hours into the day. Right now, it's one of the latest times that you could daven, you could begin davening. The time is around 1:30 in the winter time. It gets as early to close to 12:15. Okay, so tremendous different times. Now, in the winter, the time is much shorter, the end time, but the start time is much later. In the summer, the start time is later, but the last time you could have mincha is much earlier. In the winter, you gotta finish mincha by 4:30 almost sometimes, right? Uh, as opposed to in the summer, you have until 8:15 or so, right? Even later sometimes. 8:30, you have to finish by, right? So um the question becomes, it's a very relevant question, which is it permissible to begin parts of Mincha before that time? In other words, does that time just apply to shemoneh esray? Shemoneh esray is the main course of Mincha. That's what it's all about. And therefore, as long as shemoneh esray is after the Mincha time, then it's fine. Or do we say that no, that Ashrei is attached to Mincha, and therefore, just like shemoneh esray, you cannot start before the 6.5 halachik hours into the day, so too Ashrei you cannot. Now, this question extends and is very applicable on Shabbos, which is what we're learning about, Shabbos Mincha, which is Shabbos Mincha, are you allowed to start Ashrei, letzeon, the Kaddish before, veani, tefilasi, laining? Are you allowed to do all of that before 6.5 halachik hours into the day or not? Why yes, why not? So we have to touch upon that Shiloh. Before we get to that very briefly, actually, let's just get to that. I'll say what I wanted to say another time. So there aren't really so many sources that talk about this very relevant question and topic that comes up. But there's a beautiful tshuva from the Tzitz Eliezer on this topic, which there's a fair amount of length on in this tshuva. So in this tshuva over here, Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg in the Shilos Veteshuvos Tzitz Eliezer chalek Yud Siman Chaf presents this information in a very nice way over here and all the logic behind it. So we're going to go through this and see if we could come up with, see if we could have a better understanding than before today. Here on the top left is the question, could you do it earlier? Maybe only shemoneh esray you need to do earlier. So he says logic would dictate, if you're just thinking about it from a logical perspective, l'chayra, it's permissible. You could start everything as long as it's not shemoneh esray before mincha time. Because mincha time, 6.5 halachik hours into the day, is only on the shemoneh esray itself, not on the rest of davening. However, he says, after I researched this topic, I rejected what where my mind led me from a logical perspective. You can't just go based on logic. After researching this topic thoroughly, appears, according to my humble opinion, you should not say anything before 6.5 halachic hours into the day. None of it. Ashrei, letzeon, the laining, nothing. And he says it goes without saying that you shouldn't lain before the proper time of mincha time. Rather, even Ashrei letzeon and the pasuk of veani tefilasi. You should not do it before mincha time. Why? So he says, I will explain. Let's discuss each one individually and isolate it and analyze it. Let's start with laning first, okay? Laning, as we already learned over the past few sessions that we've had already on the halachas of mincha, the Gemara and Baba Kama and Pei Beis teaches us that the reason why we lain on Shabbos a second time by mincha is a takana from Ezra. Ezra enacted. Why? Because of the yoshvei karanos. Yoshvei karanos, we saw around 7 different explanations what that means. Rashi explains a simple explanation. They're the people who would work during the week. During the week, they would be involved with their stores, with their businesses, and they wouldn't have time to go to Shul on Monday and Thursday. Says Rashi, therefore, we give them an extra laning on Shabbos so that they could learn a little bit of extra Torah. That's one explanation. Explanation number 2, the Shita Mikubetzes, also the Meri goes into this more as well, is you had people who would sit and they would get drunk, they would get intoxicated at that time. They would sit by the corners of the street, so to say. And therefore, they said, no, instead of just wasting that time by getting drunk, rather, it's better to utilize that time for Torah. And therefore, that's a second explanation. The Aruch HaShulchan over in the halachas of Kriyas HaTorah in Siman Kuf Lamed Hey mentions this idea from the Shita Mikubetzes as well. We saw, he doesn't quote it, but there are other cute explanations as to what a yoshvei karanos mean. You had the Ben Ish Chai, Karen, the horn, Torah goes into one ear, goes out the next, they forget it all. They just open a keren in a corner of the sefer, of the page, and then they forget it all. They don't learn the whole sefer. A fifth explanation we saw is that that this was enacted as a means to an end. It was bait in order to get these people into Shul, whether you hold like Rashi, the Shita Mikubetzes, to get them in Shul, and then they'll stay there for the drasha. A tweak to that is explanation number 6, which is basically you get them into Shul, and then once they're in Shul, then they'll start learning. They'll sit down and learn in the base medrash. So it's around 6 explanations or so of a yoshvei karanos. I'm sure there's even more if you look into it more. So now,
But so
but let's
what?
discuss the main explanations on this page. We
No,
have
but they would.
Rashi and the Shita Mikubetzes. Rashi comes along and says that this is for the people who didn't have time during the week. The Shita says the people are getting drunk. Says the Tzitz Eliezer. It goes without saying, according to the understanding of what the yoshvei karanos is of the Shita Mikubetzes, certainly the laining has to be in this specific time. It was niskana bisman hameduyok shel haschalos sha'os tefilasi hamincha u'men, which means they had a certain time they would get around and they would drink. Therefore, you have to lain during that specific time. You can't lain earlier because the whole point is to get them to stop drinking and just wasting their time. Rather, even according to Rashi. Oh, so according to Rashi, wait a minute. You'll say it could be any time on Shabbos. Why does it have to be Mincha time? The idea is that you want them to get a laning that they missed during the week. You want them to hear more Torah. So he says, even according to Rashi Yesh Loimar, you could say that since this laning happened during Mincha time, right? Since his laning was established to be specifically during Mincha time, therefore it has to be specifically at that time. It can't be at the time of another davening, right? In other words, they already covered these guys in the morning. They're hearing laning in the morning. And therefore, since they're hearing laning in the morning, they're good. They're covered. They don't need to hear another laning in the morning. Oh, but now, later on, when they're going to drink, that's when they need the other laning. So even according to Rashi, specifically during Mincha time. And he says it's also implied from the Mishna Maseches Megilah this way as well. You can make a diuk from the Mishna Megilah on Lamed Aleph. Talks about all of the different times for laning. Okay, specifies all the different times for laning and the obligation of it. And it says b'sheni b'chamishi b'shabbos b'mincha. We lain, as we know, Mondays, Thursdays, and mincha time on Shabbos. The Mishnah then concludes and says, Shenemar, as the pasuk states, Vayidaber Moshe es moadei Hashem el b'nei Yisrael. That Hashem spoke about the holidays of Hashem to the Jews. Mitzvah since you kardin kolechad vechad izana. It's a mitzvah to read about each holiday in its time. Rashi explains it's going on the whole Mishnah, so it's implied from this that included in laning about it, reading from the Torah in the proper time is also laning on Shabbos. That's what we see clear from this Mishnah based on Rashi's understanding. You need to read about it in the proper time, when the time comes. And therefore, laning about it beforehand would not be good. It's too early. You can't do it before. It has to be in the proper time. That's a diuk. That's something that is clearly implied from the Mishna and Maseches Megillah. Then he goes in and says, that's all Torah's nigla, the reveal Torah. Now I'm going to explain this from Torah's Nistar. And he quotes the Zohar and he brings a proof from the Zohar as well, how it needs to be done in the proper time. So basically, this is the conclusion of the Tzitz Eliezer, that laning has to be done in the proper time. Questions, comments on this particular idea? David, you good?
Yeah, I don't think I have a question. But wait, why would someone have a stronger feel? Why would they feel if they're laning on Shabbos afternoon? Why would they feel as though there'd be a stronger like that would get someone into show more so than lane than tefillah?
Why would why
Why?
would it get them into shul more? Well, it keeps them there longer, and it gets
Yeah.
them when they hear Torah, it'll keep them more on the right path. And then again, remember, according to the other explanations, it was really a means to an end. It would get them to stay longer, they'll get more comfortable, then they'll also stay for the joshul, they'll stay to learn. So it helped facilitate that process more.
I mean,
But
the initial draw that it's not a chiyuv. It's just the initial draw for someone to come into shul to begin with. They would say that someone's more likely to come to shul when there's laning. That's what it's saying, right?
right, I mean, that's a tweak of what it is. That could be a reality also. If they say, wait, now we have more to do, then they'll get in. Could be could be an idea. I don't know if the simple explanation. I think your question is better than the answer I'm giving, which is they have to come from Mincha anyways, right?
Well,
But the
it's not
answer
saying they
is
have.
the answer is, David, it's not just to get to the physical shul, to the physical building. It's to make sure that these yoshvei karanos, according to Rashi, that did not hear the laning on Tuesday and Thursday, will get more of a quota of learning, of Torah learning. So that's where it comes from. Okay?
Mhm.
I have a
Yeah.
question just in regards to
Yes.
his first reasoning is
Yes.
that this is the siman when the yoshvei karanos are, right? That in other words that this is the time, mincha time, right?
Right. In other words, during the week they would work. Now they're not doing anything
But
productive.
it has to be during this mincha time.
Correct. It can't be in the
So-
morning. They were in shul in the morning. It can't be while they're eating. They were eating.
Agreed.
Okay.
So, but other yoshvei karanos, some medactic in shows manios that knows it seems to me according to that reason you'd have wiggle room like to the earliest shows manios like for anywhere between 12:15 and
That's his point. He's saying that this is when they would start with either just wasting their time or drinking. Now, this could be questioned. I think with what we're coming on to over here is this could be questioned. What do you mean? The time changes in the summer and the winter?
That's it. Yeah.
Right? The time changes from, okay, now you could start davening in the winter 12:15 versus in the summer you can't start till 1:30. What's going on?
That's right.
So, right, so you have to come on to something. It could be also the answer to that question will be yes, there is in fact a difference, which is that in the summer and winter, back then they didn't have electricity and their day would get affected from the sunlight. So in the winter, right, it would be different timing, and in the summer also be different timing, right?
Right, but
You could come on to something like that. Even me personally, right? Right now I'm waking up a lot earlier than I do in the winter. The sun's out earlier, it's warmer,
so,
so
that's what I'm saying. So that
yeah.
in the summer they'd be up earlier anyway. So you'd have to say to wait till 1:35.
Could be too late, you're saying.
Not even too late, but I'm just saying that if you're using that svara, so
Right.
then really the earliest, the 12:15 should work all year round.
Right. So if you're technically gonna say the 12:15 should work over, so then okay, then you could daven then you could already start davening an hour before the Zman. Rather, the explanation is no. The reason why you're not allowed to, also an additional reason, not just because of that's the time when they gathered. The additional reason is for another reason, which is you can't lain during the morning time, which is a time of Shachris and Musaf, right? The Buchacher in his Eshel Avram also discusses this over here, right?
Well, you do have that.
He says in this highlighted line, no, there is no man.
Yeah,
He says, "Yesh makom loimer she'achar sheniskenu sidri atfilas hakadoshim yesh kapidish shekriyas haTorah kadosh smucho latfila dafka." Okay, he discussed it a little more here if you go through it, but the idea is that that is its own time. You can't overlap the times. Now, why I say there is no man's land is because technically musaf, right? Musaf you could technically do, right? As opposed to a regular day, there's no man's land. But on Shabbos you have musaf technically.
Shabbos you have musaf technically, but
technically no one davens that late. True.
I'm not saying no one davens that late, but I'm just saying that's
right.
Completely.
Okay, so I think based on everything that we discussed, I think that makes sense. Okay, so that covers the laning. Now we're gonna go, all right, why can't we say Ashrei and letzeon earlier as well? I'll tell you why. All right. In many places, in the Rishonim, the Lavush, and Siman Reish Beis, our siman over here, the Mishna Brew over here, why do we say on Mincha Ashrei and letzeon? We didn't do it Shachris, right?
We didn't do it Shachris because
there were many reasons, right? Okay. Now, according to that, you could do it earlier. What's the problem? What's the problem? You could do it earlier. It doesn't need to be the exact same time. What's the problem? Do it earlier. So, however, according to the Mata Moshe quotes the Rokeach, okay? He says, no. New reason why you say Ashrei Noval Letzion, all right? And why you, by Mincha, why you don't do it in the morning. New reason. We have a tradition, Masuras biyadenu, shepoishi Yisrael noichim b'Shabbos Medina shel Gehenna. Gehenna is closed on Shabbos, all right? And therefore, sinners, they are not in Gehenna over Shabbos, okay? So they said, okay, we're going to push off when you do Uval Letzion. When you do it until Mincha. Why? Kedei lesanein eish shel Gehenna lefisha pana yoim le'eserev. You want to cool off, so to say, get the air conditioner into Gehenna. You want to cool it off. You want to wait till it's already later to do it. Now, according to that, you don't want to do it earlier, right? Because as long as you delay when you say the Ashrei Noval Letzion, then you delay the potential Gehenna. So basically what he's coming on to, in other words. It's a difficult reason exactly to understand this, because what does us reciting the Uval Letzion mechanically, how does that actually work that now it delays the Gehenna process, right? Before anyone sees this, Mata Moshe, he'll say, wait a second, you don't go back to Gehenna Kimotzu Shabbos, the Rishonim. So there's what to chew on over there. Also, the Kaf HaChaim quotes the Shar Chavanos. Also, he goes into another reason, L'hamshachas or shel olam habriya b'techila terem makabel or sefer Torah. He's discussing a little bit of a Kabbalistic idea that you're using the light of the world from the creation of the world. First, you want that light before we get the light from the Torah. And then that light will be able to shine better when we lay the Torah. Now, according to that, also, it has to be the proper time. Okay? What about the pasuk of veani tefilasi? Why can't you say that before? So that also gets discussed over there. Well, there's other reasons that we do it, and according to those reasons, the basic idea is that veani tefilasi should only be said be'ez ratzon, at an auspicious time. That auspicious time is Mincha, as we discussed. Eliyahu Hanavi was only answered by Mincha, and therefore also for veani tefilasi you want to wait until after the time of Mincha comes in.
And we said the esray. I mean, I know Mincha is an esray, and that's Gemara, but we were saying the esray, it's like a catch-22. You can't say veani tefilasi because the esray was really taking out the Torah.
Right.
And I was saying you can't take out the Torah because it's not the Zman.
Right.
Now you get the Zman, so
we're going to discuss, does veani tefilasi need to be said? Should one wait for the Aron Kodesh to begin being opened to say veani tefilasi, or could you say it before? Sometimes people just right after Kaddish or just go right into it. So we have to discuss that. I mean, we already learned if you don't have a Torah, you would say the pasuk anyways.
Right.
So we have to discuss that. Additionally, we have to discuss, does that need to be said standing? We'll discuss that as well. But let's stay on top because we already have enough information in front of us right now. Okay. Quotes the Mata Moshe, the Lavush, about talking about letzeon. And he discusses that from Mincha time and onwards, you have an awakening, a hisayrus of the Midas Hadin, the strict judgment of Hashem. And this letzeon, when we say Kadosh, Kadosh, that is misoider the rachamim. That awakens the mercy of Hashem, which helps us overpower the strict judgment. Now, Shachris, we don't need to say letzeon, because we already have a lot of mercy bubbling over there anyways. We already have a lot of the midas harachamim, that shayletis, that rules. What about during the week? The weekdays are yemei hara, they're bad days. So we need to say it in the morning. After the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we got issues every single day. But on Shabbos, you don't need that. So therefore, and he also goes into Kabbalistic reasons. So therefore, according to this, it makes sense why we need to wait for the proper time. This is the reason that the Mata Yehuda quotes over here, and also the Lavush in the name of the Toilas Yaakov. So according to this reason of the mercy overriding the strict judgment, therefore, that's why it should be specifically once Mincha time already comes, and not beforehand, because you have the mercy over there. Beautiful reason. Then he goes into another side point over here. So he concludes this beautiful tshuva, small little essay, you could call it, responsa, by saying, based on all the information that we presented in an organized, methodical fashion, it makes sense. Makes sense, whether from a nigla perspective, the revealed Torah, or nistar, that not to start Mincha earlier, any part of it. Any part of Mincha, not to start earlier. L'chein b'hasel kano de'in lahaktem b'Shabbos Mincha lefnei hagos man tefilasi Mincha lo ikriyas ha'Torah v'lo emiras veani l'saz v'gam rabbis lo amirus uvaltzim. Nothing should come first. Not laining, not veani tefilasi, not letzeon. Interesting at the end, he doesn't quote Ashrei, but same idea. Ela yesh l'dayik l'haskell hakol rakim hagos man tefilasi Mincha.
What with the daven?
He just says it shouldn't be done.
Period.
Shouldn't be done. Shouldn't be done. Now, person learns this beautiful tshuva and says, what did they do before the tshuva came out? Where is this discussed before? Really? Well, the answer is a lot of these sources. You just put them all together. They discuss it. Question is there anything to rely on the other way? Okay. Is there any loophole, any logic, any rebuttal to all this information? You look in the Shilos Veteshuvos Minchas Yitzchak, by Dayan Yitzchak Weiss, in chalek vav, look in siman and gimel. Quotes this exact same Shaila. Talks about it was the 10th of Teves, fell out on Erev Shabbos. It was a press time. Said the people in the yeshiva of Telz, they daven Mincha Gedola. And they asked a question. Could we lain over here? Ashrei B'Tevis fell out on Shabbos, Ashrei B'Tevis and Shabbos. They said, could we lain right now?
What are they talking about?
It was a Ashrei B'Tevis Shabbos combination. The point is they wanted to know, could they lain before Mincha time, meaning that half hour after halachik midday, but before 6.5 halachik hours into the day. In other words, they wanted to know, is the laining from the Torah and a tiny sibor part of Mincha or not? They had the question on a fast also. Could you do it on a fast day, all right? So he says like this. The Gemara in Tainis Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, the Gemara Megilah Daf Lamed, says that the main laining that they enacted with the Haftarah for a fast is after Chatzos. What does Chatzos mean?
Midday?
Midday. Forget about the 6.5 halachik hours into the
Right,
day.
he's just saying chatzos from that.
There's your no man's land. So the
Right.
question now is no longer could you start mincha much earlier, meaning if you're not gonna daven, but you definitely can't do before chatzos, halachik midday. The question is after chatzos. I would like to add another shaila, which probably no one ever thought about, which is it permissible to begin mincha, Shabbos maybe, Ashrei, letzeon, veani, and lain, and then do shemoneh later. Do it later, a whole minyan. They have a Torah now, they're not going to have one later, whatever it is, convenience, they want to come back to that another day. So, similarly, the Rambam paskins in Perek Aleph of halachas tainis, halacha yedzayin, as well as the Shulchan Aruch and siman Tov Kofayin Vav, Sif Zayin, that the laining has to be after chatzos, after halachik midday. Rashi explains, because once it's midday, you already have the sun and the direction of the shade already begins switching sides. Switching sides, which has significance, as the Gemara Maseches Yuma Kov Chesem Beis discusses. What does that mean in English? That means the davening of Avram from when the walls started getting black. Umuchach, what do we see? It has to be after halachik midday. Not 6.5 halachic hours into the day, which is the clear halacha of when the earliest time you could begin mincha is, as is discussed in siman Reish Lamed Gimel. Similarly, the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch also say after halachik midday. And he says, I didn't find any of the poskim that say over there that it's referring to 6.5 halachic hours into the day, like mincha itself. Then he goes into another concept over here. And at the end of the tshuva, in the highlighted section, he says, "Bezen nir lefiani istaiti the b'shas hadachak efshar likroi b'toyder ulahafter ba'oisei chatzi shasha acharei chatzos. V'tfilas mincha yispalu b'shishu mechsa kain nir lefiani istaiti." He says, according to my humble opinion, in a pressing situation, it's possible to lain from the Torah and do a haftorah, a half hour, after 6 halachic hours into the day. At that half an hour after chatzos, within that half halachic hour after halachic midday. V'tilas mincha yispalu b'shishu mechla kain nir lefini saiti. But the mincha itself, you should daven 6.5 halachic hours into the day. That is according to my humble opinion. It's interesting, he says twice, according to my humble opinion, because this is quite a bold, humble opinion. What about this whole tshuva of the Tzitz Eliezer? So you could.
Tzitz Eliezer is addressing Shabbos mincha. He's just addressing week.
That's that I was about to say, but it's the same logic. There would be no difference, basically.
There's a major difference because the two Gemaras, right?
Two different lainings. You could say that.
No, the two Gemaras, right? One Gemara is addressing the tainis,
yes,
and it says specifically chatzos.
Right.
The Gemara that the Tzitz Eliezer brings down is the Gemara in Megilah about Shabbos mincha.
Right, but keep in mind, this is the same exact Mishna, right? This is the same Mishna, and Rashi said that it's going on everything. That's Daf Lamed Amud Beis, and we saw that. Where was it quoted in the Tzitz Eliezer?
But
here he said, "I want to bring a diuk, Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph." It was the same thing.
I don't have to say because one's the Mishna, one's maybe the Gemara.
All right. Before we have this conversation more,
let's bring it up.
No. I want to bring this up in the Piskei Teshuvos. Okay, they don't really talk about the Shilos so much because they don't have issues with davening early. They daven later. Right? No, I'm serious. That's where all of the real estate in the Nishma Shabbos and the Piskei Teshuvos is. Davening much later. If you're very, very late, you can only do one. Lain of davening, which all those shilos we're gonna. So, if you look over here, he says that. I think we already had a session on this, if I'm not mistaken. Also, he says, "Look, this is a specific time when you could start, okay, and you don't want to start too early." He says, even Ashrei and letzeon, it should not be before 6.5 halachic hours into the day. Certainly, he says you should not lain as long as the 6.5 halachic hours didn't come. But that's not what's interesting. Okay. What's interesting is this footnote, and I'd like to talk about this footnote for just 2 minutes. Footnote number 5. He quotes the Tzitz Eliezer that we just saw. That's how I got to the Tzitz Eliezer.
Okay.
Right? I'm not pretending that I'm fluent in Shilos Veteshuvos Minchas Yitzchak. I got a footnote. I looked the thing up. Okay. He says, Bidi Evid, if you laned after 6 halachik hours into the day, before 6.5 halachik hours in the day, after 6, the Eshel of Ram, the Buchacher, is unsure what the halach is. He says that you could be lenient. Now, I don't really know in here where he says you could be lenient. I looked at this. I didn't really, yeah, I didn't find it so clear.
Call him up and ask him.
Right. So I think that this is a mistake down here. And that's why I wrote in the comment and also in the physical one that I have, I didn't knock the Eshel of Ram, but I said, I think it's before my comment. Forget about my comment. Just look at this footnote. He says, V'chein hu, and that's also in the Shilos Veteshuvos Minchas Yitzchak, regarding a tain nesibor, okay? Regarding a fast. So he does say that you could be lenient by public fast, by public fast. He says you could be lenient, like the Minchas Yitzchak, and then he says, look more in siman Reishal Megillah footnote 4. I actually didn't look that up. But the point of the matter is that
Gives you a little bit.
No, forget about that. There's 2 issues that I have with this. Number one is that he doesn't say that the Tzitz Eliezer is super duper stringent, right? And that you shouldn't daven Mincha first. In other words, up top, not the footnote, he says you can't be lenient.
Right,
Can't be lenient.
it's pretty strong, this language up there.
Yeah, up there. But he just says, look at the Tzitz Eliezer.
Why is that?
Okay, so it's implied from looking at the Tzitz Eliezer, the Tzitz Eliezer holds, he's the one that holds this way? You're saying, Kamosha Kosev, Tzitz Eliezer.
Does it
Right?
say
But
that?
different harifos. That's what he should say. No, just like the Tzitz Eliezer says it. It's a little misleading. Okay? Fine. That's one point. Second point is the Eshel of Ram. It seems like the way that it's quoted is that he could say you could be lenient, which I didn't really see. Then the Minchas Yitzchak, like he puts in parentheses over here. Like, why is that in parentheses? You should say the Minchas Yitzchak is lenient with the fast. Take out the ayin sham shemitzadid lahakil on the Eshel of Ram and put it on the Minchas Yitzchak. Fine. Just being critic over here, but I think that's how it.
The reason why I'm pushing back so hard is because this happens sometimes. Like
This Shaila.
This Shaila happens because then when I'm davening by my mother in Chabad, right? So they start at 10, right? And then they finish Shabbos finish the whole davening about 12-ish.
Yeah.
And they eat lunch, and he tries to chaparayna mincha afterwards, so people daven mincha.
Yeah, good.
So most of the time works.
Yes.
There was maybe 1 or 2 times that I was questioning it.
Yeah.
I said, all right, we'll say Ashrei letzeon, and I'm sure, and we'll definitely make it by tefilasi mincha.
Right. So I know of a shul that's near here, also that starts a few minutes before. I know of another one. Look, based on this info, it should not be done. It's not a preferable thing.
It's not a preferable.
Wait another few minutes.
100%. I understand, but the problem is,
This
is not a black hat crowd that's gonna,
forget about black hat or not. Forget about it.
Not even black hat. These are not.
I understand. So forget about all that. Look, general halacha is that it's preferable to do it
100%. Not
okay. Fine. Okay. Now, if that can't be done, then it seems like this Minchas Yitzchak, which 4 minutes ago we were discussing, but it's regarding fast. But then I shared this footnote. It's clear that he's telling Sue. He's saying you could apply the Minchas Yitzchak on the public fast to Shabbos Mincha in a pressing situation. You have the double near lafini istaiti that in a shas adachak you could be lenient. And therefore, in a pressing situation, you could be lenient and start first, but preferably it should not. It should be done completely after.
This is the Minchas Yitzchak.
This is the Minchas
And he
Yitzchak.
was dealing with Shabbos.
No, he was dealing with the fast.
He's still dealing with the fast. This is the one with the fast?
The fast, but the Piskei Tshuva said that he quotes it over here for the halachas of Mincha, laining also. Okay? So again, to recap what we did today, preferably you don't start any part of Mincha before 6.5 hours. If need be, then there is water lion, but it's definitely preferable not to
Definitely
do it
no,
before.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a fight that is worth fighting if it's in your authority
Right.
to do so. If I was making the calls of a certain mincha gedola minyan, which always goes with the earliest time you could daven, I would start at the exact time that you are allowed to start.
I'm going to be looking more carefully what the zmanim are
Yeah.
before I go, because
It could very well be also, I'd like to add that these shuls that are starting up before don't even know that the Tzitz Eliezer exists, don't know of all these reasons and the severity of it. And the reason is simple. There are very few people in the world who are learning this siman as in depth as we are learning it, who have the patience and discipline to sit through all of this, and therefore that's why we probably have more knowledge than I would say 99.9% of Orthodox Jews. So it's something to think about, something to bring to people's attention. And again, I would just like to quote, this is in the Shilos Veteshuvos Tzitz Eliezer, chalek Yud, siman Chaf, and also in the Minchas Yitzchak, this is going to be chalek Vav, siman Nun Gimel. Of course, this is already typed up. We're going to go through notes. You'll have them for life. Everyone should have a wonderful day.
Go,
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
go for fun.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.